If you look at this beam, can you tell where it's twisted? They didn't run it through with my jig. Corner would drive me nuts. I would hate this corner. If anybody has a wide twisted board that you can't get through your joiner, you got to figure out a way to get one side flat so you can get it through the planer. This is what I came up with. Some guys in the world have made some really fancy versions of this. I went with inexpensive and very functional. These are my different flattening sleds. I got 10, 8, 4, and then my cutting board sled. So for my flattening sled, this is the nuts and bolts of it. The width of my planer is 12 inches. I made a 12-inch sled. So what I do is really carefully rip precise 1-inch strip, 3/4 inch plywood. That's gonna be my inside, and then 3/4 sandwich on top and bottom. So what I do is take my 1-inch strips and make the frame. And then on the inside, however you wanna put stability in the middle, I ran my strips like this. So on my long 10-footers, if I went this way, it seemed like there was more chance of it pushing in a bow. But if I go this way, it's just solid. So that's why I did it. With the same material, it didn't space them perfectly or anything. You can. I just wanted to make sure there were no gaps. You know, I want this to feel solid. Like I don't want to be able to have any flex in this. So that I can put my twisted stock on, I know I've got a straight flat edge that's going to push through the rollers flat. It's going to work off the high spot. So if you got a twist like this, it's going to work off the high spots here, and then eventually it's going to be one flat surface. So 1-inch strips, make your frame, put your honeycomb in. You want to glue all the ribs inside, put your plate on, and then just brad nail it in place nice and tight. If you've got a really flat work surface, and while it's drying, put some clamps on the ends. You want it as precise as you can. Oh, and then I just did a light sand, nothing fancy, when I was all finished, and then some paste wax on the bottom, and that just really helps it slide. Let me show you what I use for paste wax. There's all kinds of this on the market, but this is just what I have and what I use. I use this to wax all my surfaces, like my planer, table saw, and this on wood makes a nice, smooth, hard surface. And that allows it to slide on the planer bed really well. Another tip too is when you're making your sleds, most of your material is going to come in 8-foot, 10-foot, 12-foot sections. So I made the mistake of my first jig to make it 8 feet exactly. Just give yourself a little bit of extra because you're never going to have exactly that size piece. So I'll show you with these marks how it works going through. But first thing I got to do is shim it up. I put one here because if I pushed on this corner, that side rocks. So then what I do is just come along my jig and push to see if there's any gaps. This side's pretty tight. This side is the other loose side, so I know I'm going to need one there. Just composite shims. You can get them big box stores, or I got these at Amazon. Break at different increments pretty easily. So it works great when you're shimming in. You can just break it. Because I can't have that shim hanging out when it goes through the planer because it'll pull out. And sometimes I'll just take a shim down the side and see if there's any gaps. Because those rollers will push. And if there's nothing to support it underneath, it's just going to push that same twist. So I know this is going to be a high spot. So I'll just measure about 4 1/8 inch there. And I know this is a high spot, about 4 inches there. You can see it's got a ruler here. I'm going to go just above 4 inches, and then I'll dry fit it. I'll slide it in to see if it hits the roller or if I need to come down a turn. This goes up to 6 inches thick, so I had to think about that. Most of my material, the thickest will be maybe 2 1/4. I've got 2.5 inch sled, so now I only have 3.5. That's the thickest of material I can flatten on my jig. I didn't want to go under 1 inch thick because of stability. When you run it through the planer, the board will shift. To keep it from moving sideways, I use some painter's tape, CA glue, and activator. And I'll put painter's tape down, a little dab of CA glue, activate the stopper, just hold it in place, and that'll keep it from going this way. It would slide right off the jig if I didn't have this little stopper. So it just hits the roller. That's what I want. Might be a little tight. I'm going to back it just a little bit. And I make these marks so you can see the high points, how it's going to flatten. And you can see where it's taken down the high spots from the pencil marks. So it's taken down this high spot, one in the middle, and then the high spot down here. We got to keep running through until the pencil lines are gone, and it'll be perfectly flat. So that board I was flattening out yesterday, that would have been the top board, and if I would have kept the twist in it, you would have seen a twisty mantle. So that's exactly why I had to flatten it, and it turned out great. Perfectly imperfect, and that's my angle. I made these a long time ago. Sorry I don't have a build video of these, but if you'd like to see how I built one, I can do a small version, show you, let me know, comment below.